Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin, 1961-2023, was a controversial Russian businessman, widely known as the founder of the Wagner Group, a private military company, PMC, involved in global paramilitary activities. His life was marked by a dramatic transformation from petty criminal to a powerful figure close to the Kremlin. Here's a summary of his life story. Yevgeny Prigozhin, early life and criminal background, birth and family full name. Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin, born June 1st, 1961, place Leningrad, Soviet Union, now St. Petersburg, Russia. Raised in a working-class family, Prigozhin's father died when he was young. He was brought up primarily by his mother and stepfather. His early environment was typical of Soviet urban youth in the late 20th century. Youth and early offenses, Prigozhin was reportedly a promising student and even trained as a cross-country skier in his youth. However, in the late 1970s and earliest 1980s, he became involved in petty crime, including theft and fraud. Criminal conviction. 81. At age 20, Prigozhin was arrested and convicted for a series of crimes, including robbery, fraud, involvement in organized crime, gang-style theft. According to court records, he was part of a gang that attacked women and stole their belongings. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison and served approximately 9 years in Soviet labor camps before being released in 1990, just before the fall of the Soviet Union, post-prison. Life upon his release, Prigozhin re-entered a radically changing Russia, where Soviet central control was collapsing and a new capitalist economy was emerging. Like many former convicts of that era, he saw opportunity in the chaos. He started small by selling hot dogs on the streets of Leningrad with his stepfather, eventually building up enough capital to open a chain of restaurants and catering businesses. This transition from convict to businessman is a key part of Prigozhin's mystique. He embodied the wild 90s era in Russia, where former criminals often became powerful oligarchs or warlords. Let me know if you'd like details on his transition into business and how he built ties with Vladimir Putin. Yevgeny Prigozhin, rise to prominence. After his release from prison around 1990, Yevgeny Prigozhin began a remarkable and controversial ascent. From street food vendor to trusted Kremlin insider, his rise is closely tied to post-Soviet Russia's chaotic economic transition and his eventual personal connection to Vladimir Putin. 90s. From hot dogs to fine dining initial ventures, Prigozhin started by selling hot dogs with his stepfather on the streets of Leningrad. Using the profits, he gradually entered the restaurant business. Top 5. Opened Old Customs House, Stara Tamozhnya, an upscale restaurant in St. Petersburg. T7. Opened New Island, Novi Ostrov, a luxury floating restaurant on the Neva River. This became a favorite of the St. Petersburg elite, including then-Deputy Mayor Vladimir Putin. Early 2000s, building Kremlin connections as Putin rose to power, first as Prime Minister, 1999, and then President, 2000. Prigozhin's fortunes rose in parallel. His catering company, Concord, began receiving massive government contracts, including supplying school lunches, feeding the Russian military, providing catering services for Kremlin events. This led to his nickname, Putin's Chef, not for culinary skills, but because of his close, loyal service to Putin's inner circle. Mid-2000s, expansion into government services, Concord Catering evolved into a major government contractor, allegedly securing billions of rubles in contracts. His companies were accused of operating under non-competitive tenders and enjoying protection from legal scrutiny due to Kremlin ties. Secret operations. Begin. Wagner and disinformation. By the early 2010s, Prigozhin's role expanded beyond business. He began funding covert operations that aligned with Russian geopolitical goals. Around 2014, he was connected to the founding or financing of the Wagner Group, a private military company used in Ukraine, Syria, and Africa. He also reportedly funded the Internet Research Agency, IRA, a troll farm, later sanctioned by the U.S., for attempting to interfere in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. U.S. sanctions and global notoriety. Prigozhin was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department in 2016 and again in subsequent years for election interference military activities in Ukraine. Funding Wagner's operations despite these sanctions, he became more powerful, operating in a legal gray zone, protected by his relationship with the Kremlin. Public emergence. 2022-2023. For many years, Prigozhin denied any link to Wagner or disinformation efforts. In 2022, during the war in Ukraine, he publicly confirmed he founded Wagner and took a more visible role, personally visiting front lines and recruiting prisoners for combat roles. Prigozhin's rise was marked by loyalty to power, strategic opportunism, and a willingness to operate in the shadows, until he stepped into the spotlight in 2022-2023, ultimately clashing with the very system that empowered him. Yevgeny Prigozhin and the Wagner Group. Military activities and global operations. The Wagner Group is a Russian private military company, PMC, widely believed to be created or heavily funded by Yevgeny Prigozhin around 2014. Though initially secretive, Wagner eventually became one of the most powerful unofficial tools of Russian foreign policy, offering Moscow military deniability while pursuing its interests abroad. Founding and structure formed around 2014, after Russia's annexation of Crimea. Founder, financier. While officially denied for years, Prigozhin confirmed in 2022 that he founded Wagner.Command. The group's first known military commander was Dmitry Utkin, a former GRU, Russian military, intelligence officer, and alleged neo-Nazi, who used the call sign Wagner, inspired by Hitler's favorite composer. Status: technically illegal under Russian law, PMCs are not formally permitted, but state-tolerated due to its usefulness. Major theaters of operation: Ukraine, 2014-2023. Wagner's first major deployment was in eastern Ukraine during the Donbass War, 2014-2015, played a critical role in training and leading separatist militias, carrying out black ops and assassinations. During the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, 2022, Wagner took on a frontline role, especially in brutal battles like Solidar Bakhmut, where Wagner suffered and inflicted heavy casualties. Prigozhin recruited tens of thousands of prisoners from Russian jails, offering pardons in exchange for 6-month combat tours. Many died in high-risk assaults. Syria, 2014 President Wagner supported Bashar al-Assad's regime in fighting rebel forces and securing key oil and gas fields, worked alongside Russian regular forces, but also conducted independent operations, often focused on securing strategic energy infrastructure. Notable incident: in 2018, U.S. forces killed dozens, possibly over 100, Wagner fighters near Deir ez-Zor after they attacked a U.S.-backed Kurdish base. Africa, 2017, present. Wagner expanded across Africa, often offering security in exchange for mineral concessions. Central African Republic guarded the president and trained local forces, accused of executions, torture, and rape. Sudan supported military rulers and helped control gold mining. Libya supported warlord Khalifa Haftar against the UN-recognized government. Mali and Burkina Faso replaced French forces in counter-terrorism roles, promising stability, often by harsh means. Wagner's African model was simple: security services in exchange for influence, minerals, or resource control, criminal activities and human rights abuses. Wagner forces have been accused of torture and extrajudicial killings, targeting civilians, looting, and resource theft use, of extreme violence to maintain control or spread fear, e.g., the sledgehammer execution of a Wagner defector. Human rights organizations and Western governments have sanctioned Wagner and condemned its actions as war crimes. Tools of geopolitical influence, Wagner acted as an unofficial arm of the Kremlin, doing things the Russian government could deny while still benefiting from. Provided plausible deniability, influence in fragile states, proxy military power, resource extraction. In this way, Prigozhin's network became a state within a state, operating both inside and outside the law. Yevgeny Prigozhin. Political influence and disinformation campaigns. Beyond his role in military affairs through the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin became a key figure in Russia's information warfare, particularly through covert influence operations aimed at destabilizing democracies abroad. These efforts were tied to disinformation, cyber operations, and political interference, making him one of the Kremlin's most effective and dangerous shadow operatives. The Internet Research Agency, IRM, founded, circa 2013-2014, location, St. Petersburg, Russia, often dubbed a troll factory. The Internet Research Agency, IRA, was allegedly funded and controlled by Prigozhin through his business network, notably the Concord Group of companies. Mission of the IRA: manipulate public opinion, division in target societies, disrupt democratic processes, promote pro-Kremlin narratives. IRA employees posed as ordinary citizens on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, and other platforms, creating and amplifying fake content to influence real-world political debate. U.S. election interference, 2016. According to investigations by the U.S. intelligence community, the Mueller report, the Senate Intelligence Committee, the IRA led a massive covert influence campaign targeting the 2016 U.S. presidential election.